The GAA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. Money back as a free bet on any championship match on live TV. If your losing first goal scorer bet gets a goal.
Well, when I started running, I suppose I didn't stop, and when I got the chance to go, I said I should go on. So
Kilkenny 2-27, Cork 3-18, Brian. And how do you describe a team that played so well in the first half, Cork, and should have been more up at half time, missed some goal chances, and played most of the good hurling and put an in lovely ball into a two-man full forward line who were running amok? How can they go into the dressing room half time and lose their mojo to the extent that the game was practically over 15 minutes after half time?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's and obviously the huge criticism of Cork now is that they're soft again. It's coming back to that. But is that completely wrong? Oh, I don't think so either, because what did Kilkenny do? They brought it into a battle. They increased their physicality. They started to win their one-on-one situations. Cody, I can only assume, ran the hairdryer treatment on his half-hour line in particular, start winning, their puck-outs. They don't. I know they hit the odd short puck-out, but, if they go route one and Walter Walsh and TJ Reid, it's up to them to win it at the same time. And they just start to win those one-on-one battles all over the field. And look, you keep saying, if you listen to Brian Cody and if you read his comments this morning, he says the same thing over and over again. And I don't think he's trying to fool anyone. He talks about the complete honesty of his players. He talks about his players taking responsibility on the field, playing what's in front of them. He doesn't look for the credit. As he said, in Croke Park, you can't get a huge amount of messages out onto the field. So players have to hurl what's in front of them. And he has huge trust in these players. And if you do take the starting 15 for Kilkenny, you know that you're there on merit because you've gone through the trenches, essentially. So there's that ultimate trust, and that's built up over time, I think, essentially. And we talk about this manliness, the way they play their hurling and all that. So it's been built up over years, and it's an eternal cycle. Obviously, Cody's been there now for 20 odd years. So the things, his key messages have never changed, and I suppose that aspect of hurling, for all the tactics in the world, that doesn't change either. And even we saw that with Patrick Horgan's interview last week. Prior to the match, he was talking about all the video analysis in the world, but when you go out in Croke Park, it's you against your man, and no video is going to help you then. So it is amazing, that primeval, that essential, that man-on-man battle in hurling is still so important.
Yeah, no, it is. I read those comments from Cody and I thought they were interesting. He says in Croke Park it's not communication from the sideline or anything like that. It's players taking on responsibility and doing whatever it takes as they see things unfolding. Their willingness to keep going and keep going. They were the things that essentially swayed it for us today. So, Conor Fogarty is, a lot of people picking out the tactic of Conor Fogarty maybe dropping a little bit off his man and covering space. And he was marking Lehan and Daniel Carney. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to do to be dropping off those two players. But is Conor Fogarty, do you think, just doing this as he sees the lads inside running amok and going, geez, I must drop back here, there's pressure? Because I do take the point that players on the field, the leaders, can spot these problems way before a manager, oftentimes. Do you think there's an element of players just being smart analysts themselves on the field?
Definitely, and I know that from my own perspective, it's way easier when you're on the field to see these switches. Yeah. And to see where you need cut out space, because you're in the middle of it, you're in the thick of it, and it can be hard because I've obviously at times been out on the sideline and it's not as obvious, and it can be hard to get messages across exactly what you want as well. But I think Kilkenny did yesterday, and I have to give them credit. I think they went back to being Kilkenny, enforcing their will on the way that they played. After the initial burst from Cork, they decided, the hallmark of Kilkenny is a strong defence, putting up a wall across that half-back line, essentially 4 and 5 players there at all times, half-forwards dropping deep, huge work rate all over the field. They are mixing it up a little bit better. They're obviously not a slick, short passing team, but they are able to mix it up that little bit better than what they used to be. But they're going back to what makes them Kilkenny. I think the one criticism I have against them in that Leinster final is that they were so unlike Kilkenny. They were so concerned with Wexford, and they exposed themselves massively at the back at times. Now, I know Wexford forced that on them, and you have to give Wexford credit for that as well. But obviously they'd lost what it was like to be Kilkenny, and we saw that going down the home stretch. Essentially, that was our big criticism of Kilkenny. Yeah. So I think you have to give them credit. They went back to what they know best, and as you said, maybe guys were being vocal on the field, half back line, calling back Conor Fogarty and so on and so forth. So that works. And you've been involved in teams like that where the players take ownership on the day and start, making the calls, and you go here and you trust each other essentially.
Yeah, no, I do think that there's no better analyst. I think managers should use players a lot more than they do, because if you're left half back, there's no better person to analyse the breaks in midfield or what midfielders are doing than you, because you're standing there staring at them as the kick out comes. You know what I mean?
You were very slow in the GAA for that, because you look at other sports like the Cricket World Cup yesterday. The captain, which in our essence is almost the manager. He's in the middle, the thick of it, and the same you see in the rugby, that the rugby captain is part of the selection team and makes the calls on the day of the match and all those sort of things. So we probably were very slow to change that aspect or that dynamic in the GAA, I think. But I think it's probably only a matter of time. Probably some of the top teams are implying that.
Oh, I think they are. No, they definitely are. I know Jim Gavin absolutely takes feedback from players on stuff like that. You'd be mad not to.
You're mad not to, yeah.
They could have one of the future best analysts in the game standing on the field in the thick of it, and you're deciding you know better. You need to have a bit more humility and ask them. But anyway, I do think the Kilkenny players put fires out themselves. I do agree with that. But who was it? Oh yeah, sure, the puckouts were a big thing. It almost shows how Cork's performance is so directly linked to Nash's puckouts, because when they were going well in the first half, they were flying it. And then they completely malfunctioned in the second half, where Anthony Nash, which I couldn't believe, resorted to booming the ball as far down he could down the field. And sure, that's bread and butter for Kilkenny.
Yeah, especially because Cork don't have a ball winner of that.
Yeah, well, only Harnedy. Yeah, he's the only one.
Harnedy, yeah. And still, look, you can't put everything down top of him,
No.
So and we don't know was there something wrong with Aidan Walsh or not, because obviously
he's injured.
there.
He's definitely injured. Yeah,
he's injured. Yeah, so because look, that puts that one to bed. But Cork, only 3 of their forwards scored. The whole in forward line, the whole half forward line was taken off. Bill Cooper didn't score. Obviously, he went off injured as well. So look, they just didn't score enough essentially either. But as you said, it's their ability to win their own ball, or the dirty ball. That is one of their massive problems, and it hasn't changed. I think now they've lost 6 consecutive matches in Croke Park as well. So that they're all essentially knockout games when they get there. So they're on a bad roll there, and this is. We talk about being un-Kilkenny, this is very much un-Cork, and this softness has crept back into their game again. They definitely need to mix it up. They're fantastic hurlers, brilliant, skillful hurlers, but we're just probably not seeing enough of a mix, because that's essentially what you need. Going back to the puck-out strategies, as you said, I've always been somewhat critical of it, because it is totally dependent on open space and huge movement by the half-forward line and midfield. And that's all great, and it's all great, particularly as you said. And I don't mean this as a slight against Munster Championship, but earlier in the year when those gaps are there more often than not. Whereas when you get down to business in the Championship, those spaces are not available anymore. So you have to be able to mix and match your puck out strategy. You have to be able to go long and be able to go with these runners.
Yeah, well that's the thing, and we see it in football a lot now. So you have a puck out strategy. It's all about movement, and it's all about the players up the field following your decoy runners into areas, so that you're going to put it into an area where the man that it's for. But in Gaelic football now, they're all going zonal. So we saw the example last night on the Sunday game. I think it was one that was directed at Harnedy, and Harnedy went running out for it. And the 2 Kilkenny defenders just shifted him off one to the other. They actually didn't run with Harnedy. They actually... So say if you're in the half-back line for Kilkenny, the best thing to do against Cork is to not actually move at all. And the Cork half-forward line can move over and back, and they'll end up just running from one over to another, and they're going to run towards you rather than you chasing around after them. When you're chasing around after them, you're going where they want you to go. Whereas if you hold your position, the ball is going to land in either right half back, left half back, or centre half back position. So if you don't move, you've probably a stronger chance than if you're chasing these lads around all over the place.
Definitely, and Kilkenny in particular were masters of that down through the years, and it comes back to good communication on that half back line. They probably have to go with them about 5-10 metres until they know for definite they're switching.
Yeah, then pawn them off. Yeah,
and then pawn them off, and then you take responsibility for doing this new man. But the only possible way you can be the defender in that situation is on the outside. Then to the sideline stage. but you're probably after running. You could be after running from 10, trying to get the whole way across to 12, or 11 over to 12. You've huge yardage to run in that situation, and also with a ball like that, maybe a midfielder or half forwards dropping back as well into that space. So even if you do win it, you could be after running 40 or 50 meters. You're going full tilt, and you're being pushed and hushed out, away from goal. So even if you did win it, you can be running down a blind alley essentially. So you're dead right. That communication, that half back line, let them off sometimes. Once that communication's there, but if it's not there, it's an awful mess. I've seen both sides of it as well.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. Just on those puck outs again, because when he resorted to the booming ones, because he went short to a couple of times. Sean O'Donoghue, Niall O'Leary, Christopher Joyce, Mark Ellis, Steve MacDonald. And the thing of when Cork goes short maybe to a defender, they come out running, soloing the ball, and they try to create the overlap and hand pass over the head. Kilkenny were so ravenous for turnovers, like it's probably a risky game against them.
Yeah, and it didn't look hugely comfortable. Like Sean O'Donoghue and O'Leary in particular didn't look comfortable. Even Mark Ellis at times, they look shaky. They weren't probably using that ball intelligent enough. And as you said, that Kilkenny, Richie Hogan got in a couple of blocks early on. He kind of set the tone. Then when the subs came on, their work rate was fantastic. And not only was their work rate fantastic, and this is another key point we need to make, their subs scored 6 points in play.
Yeah.
Cork, none of their subs scored. Tipperary only got 1 point from their subs. And I don't think Lanny Leash sub scored either. So it just shows on the day for all four teams the impact of that Kilkenny bench essentially.
Yeah, no, it was. Walter Walsh was outstanding when he came on. He got 3 from play, and Damien Cahalane ended up coming on to mark him after 54 minutes, but that was 20 minutes maybe a little bit too late.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and Catalane's big and he's raw, but like there's obviously something amiss there as well. That he's not seen as a first choice defender at the moment. So that he's one person that could probably bring that physicality. I know Owen Cadigan obviously brings it, and he's a wily old fox in there at full back, but you'll be thinking that there'd be room for two of them.
He played well, Cadigan, but I thought his defending for the Fennelly goal was very poor. Like, he's goal side of him, he needs to be stronger there. Fennelly turned him very easily and then was able to bat it in the goals, but when Fennelly got his hand on the ball, you're thinking Cadigan's in a really strong position, facing him. His legs square. Fennelly's not going to be a speed demon from a standing position. He's touch tight. He just rounded him so easily.
Yeah, but Fennelly, in fairness to him, is a bear. He's so strong. But I agree with you. You would be disappointed if you were on Cadigan. He'd be disappointed for himself. You'd expect that you'd stand him up. There's no way you should get a strike off. But look, that little bat down, it's a great trick to have in your locker. If you were trying to swing the hurl in that situation, which like that actual shot wasn't in the game 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, definitely it wasn't in the game. You would have seen 20 years ago, you'd have seen people refer to a drop puck in that situation,
right?
And the drop puck has gone out of the game completely. And in fairness, it was Cork actually brought that into the game, and Donald O'Grady probably in particular.
Can you not hook a drop? Can you not hook a drop puck?
Drop puck is just you never know where the ball's going to go. That's the one thing with a drop puck. It depends on the surface then as well.
Well, you could still be hooked doing that though, no? Because that's
you can be hooked. Yeah, you can be hooked. But like obviously a drop hook in that, you see, the reason you do a drop hook in that situation years ago would have been that it's just way harder to block down.
Right.
So it's hard to get a hurl or a leg across the ball. Like any defender will tell you that. If we had JJ here, he'd be able to agree with you. Brian Carroll scored a famous one years ago. A drop puck into the bottom corner of Kilkenny goal one day. So it was a kind of a shot that was years ago utilised an awful lot more. But as I said, that the batting, it was definitely it's a fantastic way to finish, and we see players do it an awful lot more, and it's hugely effective. It's very hard to block down a batted shot.
Oh no, it's impossible, because the hurley's in front of you. You can't actually be hooked unless they stick it in between the hurl and your face, probably coming in at the side. Colin Fennelly, since we're on the subject of him, like, he scored 1-1. And he had a hand in 1-1 for Richie Hogan, which he dropped one down off the hurl and then batted another one down with his hand, which I hadn't seen before.
No, that was brilliant. Yeah, it was great. Great thinking just at that split second, knowing that he couldn't get his hurl up. He was wrestling essentially with Owen Cadigan. But what he is brilliant at and this is probably why he's such a handful. He's such a big unit of a man. He's big, square man, big shoulders. He's put on huge muscle, obviously, over the years. He can thank the army for that one. He doesn't thank them for a lot, but I think all his time in the army allowed him to build himself up into that. But he's brilliant at holding the full back behind him. The full back can never get out in front of him, whether the ball comes in low or high. Whatever way he's able to do it, he's able to hold him off and make life almost impossible. You very, very rarely see a ball being cut off him, and he essentially always breaks the ball down in front of him. So, a good forward sniping around like Richie Hogan knows, no matter what whatever way he's going to get it to you, he's going to break the ball down in front of you. So that's a key thing. Cork defence should know that a little bit better, being honest, because, you never really see that ball breaking in behind from Colin Fennelly. It's always breaking down in front.
In fairness, Kilkenny put Pádraig Walsh in on Cadogan. I don't think he made much improvement on Cadogan. Cadogan was just on fire, but at least they tried to do something, with it.
Yeah, and look, Pádraig Walsh, in fairness, again, testament to the man. He has played practically everywhere for Kilkenny now since he's come in there. Wherever they see a fire, they put him in to put it out. But Cadogan was untouchable for long periods of that game, and yet he had a massive wide when Cork were on their big comeback.
And Harnedy,
and it was a routine score.
Harnedy had a terrible one.
Score. Cadogan, especially the form he was in, he scored 4. I think he'd won 4 frees. You'd expect him to put this over, and it was a big, as you said, look, Harnedy too, and it was in the melting pot at that stage because Cork were really on that comeback. Look, from that genius of a goal from Patrick Horsey.
Yeah, that knocked the wind out of their sails, definitely. There's no doubt about it. Isn't it mad that you'd say that Kilkenny won that game without Adrian Mullen flying it, without TJ Reid flying it, with Cillian Buckley taking off at half-time, with Pádraig Walsh not really in the game, then going back in on Cadogan and getting a hard time. They're kind of their main leaders.
Yeah, they certainly are. And I can only imagine that for the last week or two, all that's been drummed into those Kilkenny players is you're a one-man team, or in other words, we're going to show that we're not a one-man team with TJ. You talk about, Cillian Buckley obviously has struggled in terms of his injury, and he's not got back to form at all.
No, he's not right. Maybe he's not fully
fit. He's not
fit.
right. Yeah. And look, again, credit to him, he's trying. Richie Hogan was essentially a masterstroke. He got 2 minutes, I think, in that Leinster final. It was a complete roll of the dice from Cody, but it worked. And look, Cody's a devil for that, because John Donnelly barely featured for the last few games either, and in he brings Richie Hogan, John Donnelly out of cold. He gets 1-4 of a return. How many times have we seen that? Now look, they're obviously very good hurlers, but he's not afraid to make those big changes, and he wasn't afraid, obviously we mentioned their bench, to make changes throughout the game as well, and pull boys off when he sees fit. He's ruthless from that perspective. But you're right, look, Kilkenny, some of their big hurlers didn't perform, but I wanted to get to this point. TJ, 10 frees, but it's what he does apart from that. I don't care if he's been marked closely and he's not getting many shots off, but his work rate is it's a joy to behold, and it is a lesson for everyone out there. For those days that's not working for you, just keep working yourself and do, essentially do what's best for the team, because the amount of flicks and blocks and dirty ball that he wins and offloads, it's just it's as I said, it's a joy to behold, because he's so selfless. I just think that's it's brilliant to watch.
He got fouled a few times yesterday, when he could have scored, I suppose. But Stephen MacDonald deserves a lot of credit, because he's marked Austin Gleeson out of it in big matches as well. So he's definitely the man for that job for Cork.
I've marked Stephen a couple of times now, and he's tough and he's uncompromising, and he'll give it to you tough. And look, I actually enjoyed marking him because it was a right good battle, and you could get that manliness from him. And I met him once after that as well, and we had a good old chat about it and a good old laugh about it, because you love battles like that. I think that's what we all love sport for, when you can come off the field, don't care about how tough you were, or even if there was a stroke to, once you're manly about it, I think. So Steve McDonald's brilliant from that perspective as a man marker. And look, again, fair play to him. He had left the panel and looked like his time was done with Cork, and he came back in. And he's worked his way back to the top of his game again.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, Steve MacDonald is messing with you. You could flick him back with the hurl; he won't go down, and you'll be able to give yourselves each other a few clips, and it's just you're both going to stay on your feet.
Exactly. Now Aaron, because that's exactly what happened between us.
Aaron Duffy needs to take note of the lads you can do this on and the lads that you can't do this on. Finally, a word on Cork. Where do they go from here? Do you think Myler will stay on with them? They have a good under-20 team this year. Apparently they had a good under-21 team last year, but most of the good lads off that have been on, or in there already. Fitzgibbon and Coleman and these lads. It's hard to know. Like, I do take it, like you mentioned the soft centre, but it's hard not to say that there was a soft centre yesterday, because teams they got out fought, and like teams that don't have soft centres, like Kilkenny, don't get out fought.
No, that's one thing to pride themselves on. You mentioned Myler. Look, I feel sorry for John because he comes across like a lovely guy. He was involved at Wexford years ago and we used to come up against him, and he's a big hurling man, and involved with Kerry obviously as well, and he seems a real genuine nice guy. But there has been murmurs out of Cork all year of discontentment in the camp, and it's hard to see, it's the end of his 2-year term. It's hard to see if he can be going back there for a third year. I'd be very surprised if we see him back.
Right. There's that fella from Cork that was going to get the Waterford job. O'Sullivan, is it? Is he?
Yeah.
He could be a candidate.
But see, look, I don't know, because Cork's such a big county, and you just never know what that Cork County Board is going to do either. So it's very hard to predict who could get manager down there. But even you see Tom Kenny go in there in the last couple of weeks, very late in the season to be bringing in a guy, and even Dermot O'Sullivan spoke about that during the week. He obviously knew Tom really well, but didn't know a huge amount of his coaching credentials, and just thought it was a strange decision to be bringing him in at that time of the year. So look, again, it's just hard to know. I just think, look, Cork, they've brilliant hurlers, they've household names, they've good young crop coming through. But we've said this a couple of times, they need to marry a bit of physicality along with this silky skills that they have, and obviously essentially it's a half forward line that a toughness, a bit of mix and match from that perspective, and same in the rear guard. But you would have thought they had someone like that in Damien Catalan, but obviously at the same time, that's management's perspective. They're the ones seeing it every day.